Dark X-Men #1 of 5, There Is a Kingdom, written by Steve Fox, who has mostly done indie stuff, but he did write the recent-ish X-Men 92 House of XCII, which was like an out-of-continuity, semi-comedic miniseries retelling House of X. Art by Jonas Scharf, colors by Frank Martin, and letters by Clayton Cowles, with a backup art done by Nelson Daniel. Now, this book spins out of the Dark Web crossover, which is already putting me in a bad mood, because I thought that crossover was, let's just say nonsense. I was going to say horseshit, but this is a family podcast, so I'm going to stick with nonsense.
Yeah.
And as you might remember, at the conclusion of that story, Maddie Pryor was still the ruler of Limbo. I don't know why Magic gave her control of Limbo other than, hey, it'd be cool for a comic book. She set up an embassy in New York City where she shacked up with the troubled Alex Summers, who is, I'm going to get his name right. He is Havoc, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right.
Yep.
I've been studying, working on my Summers brothers. He's Havoc.
Good job. Yep.
Over the course of Dark Web, Maddie had been working with the troubled Ben Reilly, now known as...
yes, you give me the opportunity to say it.
Chasm, or possibly Chasm, depending on what you feel like. Yeah. He's a Peter Parker clone, missing a chunk of memories. Tons of backstory there I'm not going to get into, but he's currently imprisoned in Limbo. I still don't know why these two, who are very much in cahoots, one of them gets imprisoned in Limbo, the other is still queen of all Limbo and gets to hang out in New York City. Doesn't seem fair.
And she's like representative of a foreign nation, right?
I guess that has its privileges. Maddie has a demonic version of Cerebro and confirms for us one more time that all those mutants who are marked with the gates at the gala, not really dead. Okay, I guess not everybody's reading every book, so it's good to put this in multiple places. They really want us to know that they're just kind of missing somewhere. They're not dead. So I actually buy that a lot of these mutants we see here, if they're kind of in limbo, they're on embassy grounds, it's almost like diplomatic immunity. Maybe Charles's psychic command just didn't work. So I'm going to buy that as a reason why they could not have been forced through the gates.
It's sort of another dimension, right? And I don't think Charles has the ability to broadcast across different dimensions. So
it's like the American embassy in Australia in that Simpsons episode where they force the toilet water to go around the other way. It's basically America, right? So this is like basically another dimension.
Yes.
So there's a ton of characters here. I looked them all up. I'm not going to tell you about all of them. I'm going to list a few that seem to kind of matter. We've got M-Plate, who is kind of a vampire-ish villain mutant from Scott Lobdell's Generation X. We have, I'm going to go with Azazel, who is Nightcrawler's ne'er-do-well father, maybe. We know Nightcrawler is going to get his whole backstory revamped later this year, so stand by for changes. But Azazel, he does the bamfing thing, probably with some sort of a wrinkle differently than Nightcrawler, but basically he's like Quicksilver in the other issue. He just moves people around.
Yeah, he's basically like a demon mutant, and he has the bamfing power, but also like a energy projection kind of weapon thing. And of course, he doesn't have morality because he's a demon.
For sure. We've got Solar, who is a mutant villain from the 70s and 80s, died in the Bronze Age, brought back in Krakoa. We have Zero, who is Kenji Uedo. He's from Generation Hope. He's a mutant with gross, gooey, fleshy powers. Now, I bring him up because, do you remember in Sins of Sinister, we were told that the whole Earth was covered by the fleshy clone of somebody who had grown out of control? Remember that little bit?
Yep.
That was this guy, or a clone of this guy. So he looks gross here. Imagine that grossness covering the entire planet.
Yeah.
That's what happened in Sins of Sinister.
Yep.
So next we get a seed of a young mutant on the run, just like we had an Iceman and twice an Alpha Force and all over the place. This mutant, though, we've seen before. This is the teenager gimmick, Carmen Cruz, from Vita Ayala's Children of the Atom.
Yes.
The one child of the Atom who turned out to actually be a mutant. So, hey, she's back.
Yeah. So I want to jump in on this. I hear what you're saying. This is the same kind of mutant on the run story, but this one I actually, at least in recent memory, knew of. And I thought the Children of the Atom miniseries was garbage. So I didn't know the point for it. But this kind of makes me at least a little bit more invested in this. I know who this character is, and I do recall that this group was a bunch of people that wanted to be mutants, and they were trying to get to Krakoa for the gala. And then it turned out that one of them was, and there was some kind of like dynamic of the wannabes.
Some real jealousy going on, yeah.
Yeah, and then the real one. And they're kids, right? They're like really young. I remember that bit. And so this all works a little better for me. Like you've got the one who's a mutant who's being kind of hidden from, all of the searches for mutants by her other friend, and then the father of the one that's not a mutant kind of calls Orcus.
Yeah, that was decently done. That was, characters we kind of know. There's a dynamic going on. The father who wants to protect his kid, but also doesn't know to not trust Orcus. It had some fun wrinkles to it. But anyway, poor Carmen Cruz, she gets taken away in an Orcus armored vehicle where she is rescued by 3 more characters. We have Gambit, Archangel, that's Warren Worthington, one of the original 5. Remember when there was only 5 X-Men? Remember those good days? And also Maggot. You know who those characters are. So they do a pretty professional X-Men type job of rescuing Carmen, at least until one of the Orcus goons slaps a Wolverine-looking android into action. Now, this Logan bot has his own backstory. His name is Albert. He dates back to the early 90s, most recently seen in the I, Wolverine miniseries. That's I, Wolverine, one word, like iPhone. He has a whole thing going on. It's like a tragic android. Am I real? Am I not real? You know the idea. You can look it up on your own.
Yeah, I kind of have thought this was a little too much. And what I was hoping that this could have been was just the story we were told more recently with like X-Men, where Orcus would have a bunch of skeletons of Wolverine, like fueled with Sentinel powers, right? I didn't need this to be a character. This could have just been a MacGuffin, skeleton
like
of Logan
one
thing.
Bit of old continuity too many, or maybe 3 to 6 bits of old continuity too many. Again, I was just exhausted by Googling at this point, so I could, if you're only reading this book, maybe it doesn't bother you as much.
The role that it follows, of it just being a very dangerous, unexpected Wolverine that's in this armored transport that then, seriously injures Archangel,
right.
100% works for me, right?
Snips him right through the chest.
Yeah, that part's great. So I thought, again, I would have been much happier if this was just one of the skeletons. Yeah,
I expect that he is going to be a whole subplot going forward. Otherwise,
yes,
why make him this specific?
No, for sure. Yeah, there's going to be something where they get him on the team and blah, blah, blah. But again, too much. Because I was really invested in...
Maybe 3 issues from now, we'll say, oh, yeah, that was a good call. But as for right now, it just seems like too much icing on the cake.
Yeah. Because otherwise, this was cool to me, right? Like, you've got the team that was all hanging out in the spooky mansion that Madeline Pryor has set up, right? Rescuing
so this team is now rushing in to rescue the first team, and very different feel to them, right? So this is Madeline Pryor herself with Havoc and Zero and Emplate and Azazel. So they're just killing Orcus goons. And it's not really clear to me yet, I think on purpose, what the relationship is between the 2 teams, right? So when Carmen asks Gambit, are they on our side? He just says, that's complicated, which, for this book, saying it's complicated, that really means something. So, yeah, do you have a feeling for, were they working together, or are they at odds, or what is their relationship?
No, my sense was that the little subgroup of mutants with, Archangel and Gambit were maybe just out here doing what we've seen with Bishop and a few others, right? Just kind of like on the run, little
Shadowcat, right?
Group.
Just on their own, doing some little strikes, some rescuing when they can, beating up on Orcus when they can. But they do seem to know of each other. They're not surprised to see the other team.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they know. I mean, Alex certainly knows most of these people. And I think the X-Men know of Madeline Pryor, at least.
Sure. So, long and short of it is, the combined team does rescue Carmen, and they bring her back to the Limbo Embassy. But Havoc is pretty badly wounded. He gets back. Poor Warren is left behind to the tender mercies of Orcus. That's a big deal. So in a final scene, we see Warren stuck inside some kind of a stasis capsule with 2 Orcus higher-ups there I don't recognize. One's a big dude in a suit with glowy red eyes. The other lady, it's a blonde lady with kind of a frog face, although maybe that's just an art problem. And the very, very last page is a splash that shows 2 more characters in Orcus custody. In front is a woman who looks a lot like Madeline Pryor, but even freakier and more animalistic. This seems to be a multiversal version of Madeline, who seems to spin out of Hickman's Secret Wars event. Oh boy. There's tons of kettles of fish that I don't know how far we're going to go into, but again, more backstory. And behind her is a creature with a face that resembles one of the xenomorphs from Aliens. This, according to the House to Astonish blog at least, this is the Banff Dragon, a demonically transformed nightcrawler from this same world as this Madeline. If I've been saying Madeline, I mean the same lady, Goblin Queen. I'm not even sure. So
I would say the one thing we forgot to talk about is the Dark X-Men show up to rescue the Gambit and Archangel, and then Alex gets a Wolverine claw right through his throat because he's, I guess, distracted by Madeline kind of killing Orcus people, and he's kind of aghast that she's doing that so brutally.
Yeah, he gets a rough time. Maybe the chest, maybe the shoulder. Yeah, I guess he's spitting up blood, so he's in bad shape, and he doesn't have a healing factor like Archangel does. So he's, and
the 5 are off the table. So if he dies, he dies. And
now we're in Rocky 4. If he dies, he dies.
Yes. I don't know how he's going to survive. I mean, I guess Madeline's got some magic powers, but
she's got all the magic powers. Yeah, she's going to pull some sort of a rabbit out of a hat.
Yeah, I mean, he got some adamantium claws through the neck, and he's spitting up blood.
Yeah, we also have a 9-page backup, largely about Havoc. It has a different artist and shows kind of how some of these characters came to live there, but mostly seems to be showing how devoted Havoc is to Maddie. I'll call her Maddie, and how he does kind of all the grunt work to keep the embassy running, and also just how much of a grade A simp he is for her.
Yeah, I like that though. I like this dynamic, like that she's actually not Jean Grey. She's got this really dark side to her, and even if she has, I guess, reconciled with Jean, she's still kind of a bad person. Right, she seems to take
really
pleasure
not the kind
in
of person who should be put in charge of a whole dimension, but that's
no, and she seems to take pleasure in doing bad things and dealing with demons, and he keeps trying to get her to like agree to be less violent. She's like, yeah, whatever.
Was it Strife who created her? Remind me of her origin.
Oh no, it wasn't Strife. It was Sinister. So basically, he was trying to develop. He's very interested in the Summers line, and he was trying to create some sort of kid that'd be able to combat Apocalypse. And so when Jean was dead as Phoenix, he created Madeline and pretended that she, tried to present her as Jean. And then Scott married her, and then they had a kid, and that kid got infected with technoorganic virus and sent to the future and became Cable, blah, blah, blah.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, so right now Havoc comes across as this very much leaning into the simp side of his character, which, we've seen him go through some things in Hellions. I hope we see some complications to this part of him. He's probably enjoying having this new role to be in of support. I hope we get to see some stuff grow out of it, because right now, especially if you look at the very, very last panel, he's drawn like he's just kind of look on his face, and yeah, I want to see some more fight in Havoc.
I think what's interesting here is her whole thing is she's like, nobody loves me, nobody cares about me. And I'm like, you freaking got a guy that's like going to do anything for you, right? So there's a little bit of tragedy there. I wonder, is like she's still pining for Scott and annoyed that Scott, who was married to her, like divorced her.
That is, a whole weird dynamic to have. You've got a clone thing, you've got a brother thing. If you look up some Summers family trees on the internet, they kind of all go in a circle. It's just, that's comic books for you, but especially the Summers family. So yeah, to wrap this up, there's a lot of stuff in this book. You're going to find something to enjoy in this book, but to get there, you're going to have to wade through all sorts of other things that maybe you're not so crazy about. If you're a long-time X-Men super fan, read every issue all through the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and you know it all, you may love seeing all these characters here. For me, it was a little too much. I would have edited, we don't need Azazel and Zero and Emplate and Carmen and Albert the Logan bot and Havoc and Chasm, and it's just too much. So
yeah.
I'm hoping that a few of these stories come to the front and the rest kind of fall behind. I want to know why this book matters. I want to know why this book exists. Otherwise, yeah, I'm going to get tired of this book real quick.
It's art a lot for
mostly pretty cool. The backup art was a different tone to it, which is fine because it's a different kind of a story. Cut long story short, 6 out of 10.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I liked it a lot more. For me, it's more of a 7. And
fair enough.
I agree with you. It's a lot. And I was going to say it's a lot for like a 5-issue miniseries.
Oh, yeah, my gosh.
It seems like they are dumping way too much.
Well, maybe that's why he puts it all in issue number 1. If you're doing this as an ongoing, you could kind of trickle these out over time. But Steve Fox wants to, maybe this is going to be the only X-Men book he ever gets to write for all he knows. So if he has all these stories he's always been wanting to tell, he kind of just barfs them all out at once. That was a rude way of putting it, but you know what I'm saying.
It's interesting because the things I'm interested in right now is, heck, Orcus now has Archangel. Does that mean, is he going to get sent to the same
huge thing,
the same jail that Scott is in? I wonder. And what's going on with Havoc? Is he going to be like one of the first deaths? And he's a relatively major character, right? This might be a emotional piece for the X-Men, right? Whether they don't have the resurrection protocol.
Yeah, and if he dies, does Maddie end up calling Chasm up to kind of be a replacement Havoc?
Yep.
Because they have some real similarities as characters.
Yeah, and she is talking about how, she felt Jean's death, and she seems to be like trying to become more heroic to like fill the shoes of Jean while she's gone for a week. Since we have the Jean Grey comic next week.
Like I said, there are good things in this comic, just too many of them.